Alright there lads, we're actually British here, and today we're a step back. Yep, that's right. I've finally got my hands on a Master System. Well, this is a Master System Model 2. I've got this mainly because I couldn't be asked to find a good deal on an original Master System, so I just thought, fuck it, I'll get a Model 2. Unfortunately, one of the downsides of the Model 2 is that it doesn't have an AV output, and that means I'm going to have to resort to emulation. Don't worry, I do have the original game, so shouldn't be anything wrong. So let's stop dilly-dallying and get into Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Master System.
When people think of the original Sonic game, their minds usually immediately go to the Mega Drive version, and understandably so, considering that's the most popular version. However, there was a version of Sonic 1 that was released before the Mega Drive one, and that was Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Master System. The Sega Master System was released under the title of the Sega Mark III in Japan in 1985. It was then released as the Sega Master System for reasons in 1986 in the land of colonies, 1987 in Europe, and 1989 in Brazil. The reason why I mentioned Brazil will become obvious later on. It was made to directly compete with Nintendo's Famicom or NES everywhere else, and it was a really good system for its time. It even outperformed the NES in many areas, including sound capabilities, memory, and CPU clock speed. And at least on the European front, it succeeded, mostly due to Nintendo more or less not giving a about Europe at first, and so letting Sega get a head start. Probably one of the most hilarious bits of video game trivia to me is the fact that in Brazil, the Master System is, to this day, yet to be discontinued.
Yep, that's true. Look it up. that has to be one of the most hilarious yet also kind of depressing things ever. It is kind of funny yet also depressing that Brazil is in such a state that a console released in the 1980s is still being produced.
Luckily, I was born in the UK, but unluckily for me, that means that Master Systems don't usually come cheap, so I had to scour eBay for a decent price. Good thing I found one, but I was horrified to find out that the Master System Model 2 only has an aerial output, making it impossible for us to capture it using my capture card.
I just want to take this opportunity to go on a mini rant about this thing, right? The Master System Model 2 was meant to be a sort of budget version of the Master System, kind of like the Switch Lite, if you will. And so because of that, the smaller design and the removal of the card input, that makes sense. I get behind that. But why the fuck did they choose to remove the AV output? I mean, I get this was the 1980s, but come on. I mean, surely an AV connection couldn't have been that expensive. Could it have been? I don't actually know about that, so do not quote me on that. Absolutely do not quote me on that. Don't quote me on anything, because I'm stupid, and I'm probably wrong.
Mini rant aside, Sonic was quote-unquote ported to the Master System in November 1991 in Europe, with a Game Gear version of the game following shortly after in December of the same year. It must have been quite a feat to be able to transfer the same sort of gameplay and feel from a Mega Drive game over to the 8-bit Master System, but the final product shows that they did a really good job of it. The Game Gear and Master System versions of the game are practically identical, with only a few minor tweaks to the level design being made in the Game Gear version, but I'll cover those differences when they're necessary. But that's enough about the background. Let's get to the game itself, with the story.
I'm pretty sure the story in the Master System version is identical to that of the Mega Drive version. So if you want a plot synopsis, go ahead and watch my review of the Mega Drive version. But with that aside, let's get into the graphics.
With the Master System being an 8-bit system, there's obviously a lot more limitations than the Mega Drive version of the game. Despite these limitations though, they managed to make a really good game for the time. The dark void of the title screen isn't the best start, but it quickly picks up with the impressive visuals. Each of the sprites and animations from the Mega Drive version are being accounted for and downgraded to suit the 8-bit hardware, and it's adorable. I love it. Despite the compromised visuals, each zone still manages to stand out and look brilliant and visually unique in their own right. For example, I really love the look of Green Hill Zone in this version of the game. Instead of trying to do anything really impressive with the special stages, they just made a fun little course with rings scattered all over the place and bumpers all around. It's a really charming way to experience the original Sonic game.
Now you're probably wondering what the soundtrack of this game will be like. Well, if you're hoping for an 8-bit version of the Mega Drive soundtrack, then unfortunately your hopes will be dashed after Green Hill Zone.
The only tracks that this version and the Mega Drive version share are the title screen theme and the Green Hill Zone theme. These both sound just as you would imagine, 8-bit translations of the Mega Drive tunes. Aside from that, the soundtrack is alright. Not as good as the original, I'd say. I do like the boss theme in this version, but it's not as memorable as the original. Bridge Zone is a bop too, but that's about it. It's overall just alright.
Well, that's enough sound and graphic talk. Let's get into the gameplay.
The gameplay is exactly what you would expect from a Sonic game. Run from one end of a stage to the other without dying. On your way, make sure to collect some rings, as if you hold some rings, you can survive a hit before dying. Simple stuff that I've already discussed plenty of times. The overall gameplay though has been noticeably nerfed. By that I mean that certain aspects of the game have been removed. The spin dash isn't here, but to be fair it wasn't present in the Mega Drive games until Sonic 2, so it gets a free pass in that regard. Where it doesn't get a free pass though is in the damage mechanic. The damage mechanic fundamentally works the same as in the 16-bit version. Pick up some rings and you'll be grand, but if you get hit you'll lose those rings. Where it differs from the 16-bit version though is that you can't pick up any of your rings once you've lost them. You can visually see the rings, represented here by a single ring, fly off, but you can't actually grab it. This kind of defeats the entire purpose of this mechanic, but I guess it could be excused because of the lesser hardware, but it's still pretty shit that they left that out. One interesting inclusion to the gameplay is the inclusion of a map screen in which it shows you whereabouts on a map the acts are taking place. For the first two acts it shows you the start and end of the zone, kind of like a road map, and for the third act it shows you Robotnik flying around the map and then getting into position. This is a pretty cool inclusion, I'd say. It helps to give this game its own unique style and feel. The game itself is split into 6 zones, each of which are split into 3 acts, making for a total stage count of 18. The first 2 zones are your standard platforming affair, with the third being a boss battle with Robotnik. One major difference between this and the 16-bit version is that none of the boss acts have any rings for you to collect. I guess they thought the game was just too easy, I don't know. It's weird and it makes the bosses just a bit more challenging.
Now, let's take a look at each of the zones.
Green Hill Zone. Given the lesser hardware, the team who developed this version obviously couldn't just lift up the level design directly from the Mega Drive version and put it into a Master System cartridge and call it a day. Because of that, they made totally unique stages for Green Hill Zone, with Act 1 staying fairly faithful to the Mega Drive version, but with a very noticeable absence of any loops. That's right, throughout this entire game there isn't a single instance of the iconic loop Sonic can run through. It's really quite a shame that they needed to cut these, since it was such an iconic and recognisable part of the Mega Drive version, but I can see why it was done. Instead of the tubes in the walls that fling you into the air, those have been replaced by ramps that you can gain an absolutely absurd amount of speed on. I mean so absurd that you can literally finish the entire act in a matter of seconds. Not even Chemical Plant Zone comes close to this level of speed. Act 2 changes stuff up by immediately throwing Sonic into an underground tunnel thing with water in it. It's really not that hard to navigate, thank God, so you can easily pass this zone and see what devilish contraption Robotnik has in store for us. Oh, it's literally just him floating from side to side and occasionally lowering down so you can hit him. What the f...
I mean, what was his game plan here? Was he just planning on boring Sonic to death? Because if so, it was successful, because that version of us died of boredom just from thinking about this boss. Oh, bloody hell, what happened?
You died again.
Alright, fair enough. Wait, who the fuck are you? I'm you. But screen crunched. What? What the fuck? Oh, he's gone. And, oh, you just had to leave it screen crunched, didn't he? It's just... Well, have you got any explanations for this?
That's a good question.
Fat load of good you are. Well, anyway, speaking of screen crunch...
Screen crunch is probably the most notable difference between the Master System and Game Gear versions. It's not really a massive problem, you can still play the Game Gear version perfectly well, and it was actually the version of the game that I first personally played. But the screen crunch becomes really noticeable when in fights with Robotnik. Notice here how in the Master System version I can't just jump up and score some cheap hits on Robotnik while he's in the air, but when we switch over to the Game Gear version you can see that I can absolutely obliterate Robotnik in just a few seconds by scoring a ton of cheap hits on him while he's in the air. This isn't really a massive problem, but it's definitely worth pointing out. Bridge Zone. Yep, it's literally just called Bridge Zone. 0 points for guessing what this zone entails. The first act isn't too bad, just your standard platformer level with bridges and some fishes jumping up, trying to hit you from time to time.
The second act of this zone, though, completely shits on everything that Sonic is about. Oh, because he's British, it's probably not that bad, you're probably saying. Well, to that I say, how does an auto-scroller in a Sonic game sound?
Yep, that's right, a fucking auto-scroller in a Sonic game. I thought some of the level design in the Mega Drive game discovered speed, but the entire fucking point of this act is to make you go at a bloody snail's pace, which is excruciating for the game that's meant for speed. I know that Act 2 of Green Hill Zone wasn't exactly the fastest zone either, but at least the level design of that act was at least somewhat interesting. This is more or less just Act 1 again, but you're forced to go at the pace the game allows you to. I hate it. Since the boss of the last zone was really boring, with Robotnik not even bothering to attack you, I'm not holding out much hope for this zone's boss either. Oh wait, oh my god, he's attacking me! This is an actually decent challenge, holy f***. Basically, Robotnik just alternates between two pits, shooting projectiles before he changes over. It's nothing but spectacular, but at least he's actually trying to f***ing attack me. Jungle Zone. I'm beginning to notice a pattern, a very blunt and to-the-point name of these zones. I kinda like it. What I don't like though is this zone. I don't know how to describe it, but the controls feel really off in this zone. I don't know whether that's just a matter of me being bad, but sometimes my deaths just don't feel justified at all. This feeling is magnified to 100-fold in Act 2, in which you need to climb up for the duration of the act. This is handled f***ing awfully in this act, because it seems that Sonic bumped his head before arriving here, and so his object permanence regressed to that of a 1-year-old. Every time you move up in this act, a platform disappears, and that's it. It's gone. If you try to jump down onto it, you die. I mean, what the f***? I hate this so much. The boss of this zone is the first boss that actually posed something of a good challenge to us. You're on this curved arena onto which Robotnik drops these black balls that you need to avoid. It's a decent challenge, Although sometimes I die to the ball even though I swear to God I jumped over it. But, no. Labyrinth Zone.
Oh no, I know that name. Please don't say this is a war zone.
Yes, it is.
No!
This zone. Remember how in the Mega Drive version, a mixture of horrible underwater controls and terrible level design made it the worst zone in Sonic 1? Yeah, well, take that and add more slowdown than your average British motorway. This zone is just absolutely fucking insufferable throughout, and on top of that, the Robotnik fight is just frustrating as fuck with the awfully crippled controls. Just a forewarning for anyone who's planning to play this, don't attack Robotnik while he's in the middle. You won't be able to get to the other side. It's fucking death insurance. Scrap Brain Zone. I didn't say much about this in my Mega Drive review, other than the fact that it was a frustrating piece of shit. I do kind of regret saying so little, so I'm going to try and go into a bit more detail with this version of the infamously hard zone. This zone is more confused than anything. Ironically, it's more of a labyrinth than Labyrinth Zone. I won't dwell on this zone for much longer because, well, that's about it. It's just really confusing. Also, the third act ends really abruptly without a fight with Robotnik, so I thought I'd end this section of the review just as abruptly. Skybase Zone. This zone is okay. It's a decent final zone. It definitely feels like you're going up to Robotnik's base to finally end his nefarious deeds. Act 2 though is pure bullshit, at least if you want to obtain the Chaos Emerald. I don't know how they expected anyone to know this, but you need to take a leap of faith off the first platform to land on a moving platform. After that you need to ride that and jump on the subsequent platforms until you arrive at it. Oh, and by the way, look out for the guns right after. Those shells that fire are so advanced they can hit you even though you didn't even make contact with them. The final boss is quite good though, I'll give the game that. It's more or less just a game of memorizing the attack pattern and coming up with a strategy to counter it. It's even, dare I say, fun. After that, you chase Robotnik into a teleporter, you kick his ass for a second time in a row, you release the Chaos Emeralds, the black clouds go away, and the credits roll.
So, there you have it. A basic overview of all of the zones. Now, let's get into how the plot devices work in this game. My absolute favourite part.
Following in the footsteps of its 16-bit brother, this version has 6 Chaos Emeralds. Unlike the Mega Drive version, however, you don't obtain them through special stages. Special stages in this game are simply just a chance to nab a few extra lives and to continue. Instead, you find the emeralds in the zones themselves. This is quite good in my opinion because it encourages exploration of the stages, which I quite like. Is it worth going out of your way to get them though? No, not really. They don't give you anything in return apart from a cleared up map of the starting island that's quickly covered up by an end score tally. I guess it does add a bit of replay value, but not much.
Overall, that's just about everything that I have to say about the Master System version of this game. The Master System version. The Game Gear version is more or less identical to the Master System version, except with a heavy amount of screen crunch, and I mean heavy. Although most of the time the game is perfectly playable with the screen crunch, it can sometimes not want to cooperate, which can get quite annoying. But yeah, overall not bad. So what are my overall feelings of the game? I'm saying overall quite a lot, aren't I? Well, I'm trying to think of another word for overall. So all in all, I'd say that this version of the game holds up quite well against the 16-bit counterpart. And in some respects, I'd say it's even better than it. Obviously, visually, and I'd argue musically, it doesn't even compare. But in terms of gameplay, especially with the special stages, I'd I'd say it's better, mostly because in the 8-bit version, I'm not forced to play through the exceedingly aggravating special stages to get the Chaos Emeralds, so that's a massive plus. But all in all, it's not bad. I'd say that it's on par with its 16-bit counterpart. Now, will Sonic 2 hold up just as good as its 16-bit counterpart? Let's find out next time.